Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives, and today we're going to be discussing episodes 57 and 58 of Steven Universe, Reformed and Sworn to the Sword. These episodes are a therapist's wet dream, because both of these episodes kind of deal with some psychological issues within the Crystal Gems. Case in point, let's talk about Reformed. In this case, for Reformed, what goes on in this episode is that Steven is trying to ask various people about this, is pretty much trying to get people to answer questions for a personality quiz that's supposed to be based off his favorite show, Crying Breakfast Friends. However, when he goes to question Amethyst, she kind of reacts weirdly to the quiz. She doesn't answer honestly to any of the questions, and certain questions she just doesn't know how to answer to them until eventually she just gets bored and wants to go back to her room. However, when she goes back in with Steven following because he's not done yet, she finds that Garnet's already there waiting for her. Why? Because a gem monster is loose in the temple. A creature that they call the Slinker, which apparently they had encountered off-screen, or more specifically Pearl did. And apparently the name Slinker is something Steven came up with, which they didn't want to call it, but it stuck, so there it is. And Garnet is tracking it in Amethyst's room. As such, Amethyst and Steven end up essentially joining Garnet as they search for the Slinker, and while at first they don't see the Slinker, sadly its existence becomes clear when, after Garnet tries attacking it and misses, it manages to grab Amethyst and poofs her. As such, Steven is, initially distraught, but Garnet does once again reassure Steven that, their bodies aren't real. Amethyst will be fine. As long as her gem is intact, she'll come right back. And sure enough, within seconds, she comes back. She reforms, good as new, ish. She doesn't. You see, the form she comes back in is kind of sort of resembles her original form. The biggest difference is that instead of hands, she's got 2 feet at the ends of her arms and a giant ear. Excuse me a second. Sorry about that puppy emergency. Also, heads up, I might end up having to do that later because it's chindi. Anyway, as I was saying, yeah, giant ear, hands for feet, or feet for hands. Put simply, it's clear that this form was a bit of a rush job, which even Garnet points out to Amethyst. But Amethyst tries brushing it off that they have to go once again look for the Slinker. And their search ends up leading the group to a temple, but as they're going, Steven begins asking more about the form, and still continuing to probe Amethyst for more questions for the personality quiz. But again, Amethyst seems to be just dodging them, and when he talks to Garnet about Amethyst's form, Garnet says that Amethyst essentially rushed it, using a comparison like with Pearl, because Pearl took her time with her form and tried to essentially make it fit, whereas Amethyst, like I said, it was a rush job. Amethyst hears this and takes it personally before she gets ambushed by the Slinker again, and he once again gets poofed. And just like before, she once again reforms into a mock Pearl form. Yeah, it still has Amethyst's body proportions, and she's still short, but the outfit is very clearly Pearl. She has her hair now pointed back. She's got Pearl's slinky shoes, which do not fit her, and so the tips of the shoes just kind of droop all over the place. And she has an oversaturated bow, and she actually leads to a funny scene where she actually starts making fun of Pearl by using the form, which gets a laugh out of me and Steven, but Garnet thinks it's annoying, and once again chastises Amethyst for not taking this seriously. Amethyst once again gets angry about this, and Garnet even saying, what I do with my form is my business, and Garnet says, well, it's my business if it affects the strength of the team. And Amethyst takes this as, oh, so you think I'm weak, before once again she gets ambushed by the Slinker, and once again gets poofed. Steven, which I find hilarious, once this happens, Steve says, is it weird that I'm getting numb to this? And so Amethyst reforms again, only the new form now has a giant muscly veiny arm and a giant muscly veiny leg. Yeah, it looks creepy, and even Steven at this point is disturbed. However, Amethyst is still determined to catch the Slinker, and sure enough, they manage to find it, and she does try taking it on in battle, but sadly her new form is not battle ready, so to speak. As it begins kind of falling apart, the limbs kind of shrink up and turn into noodles, and as she's still fighting, Garnet tries telling her, no, this form isn't sustainable, you gotta do something sustainable, and Amethyst says, I don't, it's like, well, then what do you want me to do? Tell me what I should be and I'll do that. Garnet tells her, no, you have to be the one to decide that, but Steven says, no, she can't, she doesn't want to talk about herself, And once Amethyst hears this, the Slinker once again overpowers her and poofs her. As such, Garnet manages to knock the Slinker away and get Amethyst's gem back, but they do not do a pursuit. In this case, they do a tactical retreat as they go back to Steven's house and meet back up with Pearl. As such, the plan is to wait till Amethyst reforms and go back in the temple to find the Slinker, but Amethyst doesn't come back right away. In fact, by the time we check back in with the group, it's been 4 hours and she still hasn't reformed, which they think is surprising because Amethyst apparently is not like Pearl. Like Garnet said, she typically doesn't take her time. However, as they talk about this, she does eventually reform, with Steven trying to tell Garnet and Pearl to be supportive, and she reforms into one that's actually natural. Yeah, what I like about the new this is her proof up. Yeah, the new body that she has for this episode, that she has from now on, is very similar to her last one. It's still, like, in this case, instead of wearing, like, regular, like, casual clothes, in this case, it looks more like a workout outfit. As her main outfit, it looks like a leotard with, I don't want to say leggings, but essentially it's like workout pants. They're kind of grayish with star emblems emblazoned on the knees. It looks very similar to her last outfit, but looks more workout ready, I guess, if that makes any sense. Either way, it looks very similar to her old outfit, her old form, and upon seeing it, everyone thinks it's great. Garnet says it's perfect because it's just her. Pearl is happy because it got rid of her drooping shoulder strap that she always had, and Steven's just happy that she's back. And so the episode ends with Garnet, Pearl, and Steven giving Amethyst a group hug. And while outwardly she thinks it's annoying, as the episode ends, she just smiles. It's sweet. I like it. I like it. The nuzzles, the cuddles. It's adorbs. But this is where we also get to Sworn to the Sword. And in this case, this deals with Pearl's psychological issues, although it also is a Steven and Connie episode. In this case, Steven and Connie, the episode actually begins with Steven and Connie having what they call a jam session. What they do is that they just take some time out of the day, play some instruments and sing some songs, and have some biscuits and jam. Essentially, it's just them hanging out and doing things together. However, after one jam session, Steven tries having a biscuit with jam and he gets attacked by seagulls, but Connie managed to use the strum of her violin, that thing that you play on it. I forget what it is. I forget what it's called. I don't play the violin, so I don't know the terms. She uses that to fend off the seagulls, and Steven thinks, wow, you're really good at that. Maybe you should try to be a sword fighter. Connie at first is kind of dubious that she can do it, but she's also not totally against the idea either, and says she probably would one day like to learn. And Steven thinks he knows the perfect teacher. In this case, he brings Connie to Pearl and insists that Pearl teach Connie. Connie's, of course, a little surprised by this, but she does take to it, and they both do urge Pearl to take her on. While Pearl is hesitant somewhat, she's won over when Connie talks about how she cares about Earth too, how she wants to be there for Steven, fight by his side. She doesn't want to be a burden, she wants to help. And even says the Earth is my home too. Shouldn't I be able to fight for it as well? And this finally inspires Pearl and says, okay, fine, let's do it. And so they begin immediately, like not even kidding. They warp right to the sky arena that we saw in previous episodes, and Pearl immediately starts the training. In fact, what's even better too, she uses the hollow pearls again, and the instant Steven sees them, he gets some minor PTSD as he ends up summoning the bubble to protect himself and Connie. But either way, the training begins, and we get a song for this episode called, I think, Do It For Him. In this case, the song essentially is there to overlay the training sequence. In this case, Pearl is little by little training Connie more and more of how to be a sword fighter. The stances, the battle, the moves, the defensive stances, all that nice razzle dazzle. But mixed into the lyrics of said song, which is actually a pretty nice song, has a nice little tune, pretty melodic. But mixed into the lyrics of this song are some rather choice lyrics. Nothing risque, but lyrics that don't exactly they're lyrics that Steven isn't exactly happy to hear. In this case, they're lyrics talking about how you need to give yourself to your master, to your liege. How on the battlefield you weren't meant to fight, but you need to protect them. Your life means nothing in the grand scheme compared to his. To do it for him, to do it for her, or that is to say, to do it for him. That you have to give your all on the battlefield. Give your all for him. That you have to do this all for him. And yes, it's becoming clear that Pearl is projecting. especially since halfway through the song she literally has a projection of her memories of the Gem War, and she sings about how she has to think about the life they'll have once the war is over, and yada yada yada, blah blah blah. And so essentially, the more the song goes on, the more Pearl starts molding Connie into essentially being Steven's knight, so to speak, thinking of herself in less, making her thinking of herself as less, and that Steven as the be all end all. Which, yeah, the more Steven listens to this, the more freaked out he is, and the less he's kind of into all of this. To the point where when the song is finally over and the training montage is done, Steven kind of wants to have a word with Connie. The only problem is that when he tries to talk with her, actually tries to sit down and talk with her, Pearl pulls Connie aside because they have to get ready for the final lesson. Even as such, they warp away to the Sky Arena, and Steven's left wondering what to do. And it's at this point that Garnet and Amethyst come in, and Steven lets them know what the heck's going on, and they're not exactly surprised. It turns out that Pearl has kept this attitude for a while. It turns out during the Gem War, Pearl held Rose in quite a high regard, which, yeah, this isn't news to us, but it turns out that in the Gem War, she held herself in such a high regard that she did not care for her own safety. Apparently, she would charge right into battle, guns blazing, so to speak, and she would get creamed every time. But every time she would keep doing it and would keep disregarding her own safety for the sake of Rose. And the instant Steven realizes that that's the mindset that she's been drilling into Connie, he freaks out and warps right back to the Sky Arena. And sure enough, once he walks in on a lesson, Pearl is telling Connie, remember, on the battlefield, you are nothing, but Steven is everything. Like, yeah, that ain't healthy. As such, to prepare for the final lesson, Pearl shrouds the arena in mist, and Steven ends up going in, and he ends up running into another Hollow Pearl, which Connie quickly dispatches. But now that he's finally got Connie, he does try to tell her, no, look, I don't want you to do this anymore. I think this is nuts. I don't want you to feel like you have to be like this. But Connie keeps trying to say, no, I understand now. Your legacy, your power, your destiny, yada, yada, yada. You are everything, and I am nothing. But I can be of service to you, and yeah, Steven doesn't want this, but she does show that she is willing to ready to protect him, as she ends up dispatching a Hollow Pearl that was sneaking up on them. And she says, it's like, in the battle, I gotta be there to protect you. To which Steven counters, but if you're protecting me, who's gonna protect you? At which point he takes out a Hollow Pearl, at which point he jumps in front of Connie and uses his shield to guard against a strike from a Hollow Pearl, the reverb knocking the Hollow Pearl back. At which point Steven tells Connie, look, in the future we're probably gonna be fighting some really bad guys, and so I don't want you fighting for me. I want you to be fighting with me. And so he says, "Can you want to share this jam with me?" And sure enough, they end up fighting side by side to take down the Hollow Pearls, and it's much easier and moves a lot more smoothly. As such, once they disperse with them, Pearl ends up getting rid of the clouds and tells Steven that he has to go because Connie has to fight Pearl herself. But Steven ain't going anywhere, and he and Connie end up reaffirming that they fight side by side, or they don't fight at all because they're jam buds. And sure enough, they both charge at Pearl, and they actually manage to make her break a sweat, so to speak. She manages to still disarm them both in the end, but yeah, it's clear that it took a little bit more effort than she thought she would because she's breathing more heavily. And she immediately starts yelling at them, saying, no, in a real battle, Steven won't be there to protect you. Steven says, no, yes, I will. And it just keeps going back and forth with her trying to say that, no, Steven won't be there for you. He never will be. He shouldn't be anywhere near the battlefield. And Steven keeps saying, no, I will be. I can't. Who says I can't? I will be there. I know I will be there. And it finally just comes to a head with Pearl yelling, why won't you let me do this for you, Rose? At which point she quickly realizes her Freudian slip, and immediately says, why won't you let Connie do this for you, before ending it all and just kind of walking away. As such, Steven and Connie go up to Pearl and begin talking to her and asking, did Rose make you feel like nothing? And Pearl just chuckles and says, no, she made me feel like everything. And upon saying that, she quickly realizes that, yeah, she probably should not have been pushing her mindset onto Connie. At which point she realizes, yes, you two really are going to be good fighting alongside each other, and she immediately begins excitedly planning training sessions with the both of them. So, yeah, it's nice. It's a nice ending. I like that. So, okay, thoughts on Reformed. It's again another nice little psychological episode that once again delves into Amethyst's Amethyst character, personality, and, well, psychological issues. Case in point, it once again delves with her image issues, and her need to be accepted and loved by others. In this case, it deals with deflection. She really, as a side effect of her own self-loathing and hatred, we see that she typically does not like to think about herself, which is showcased throughout the episode whenever Steven keeps asking her questions about the personality quiz that's tied to the crying breakfast friends, and she continuously does not take the thing seriously or just refuses to answer. It's becoming clear, yeah, it becomes very clear throughout the episode, which even Steven yells out by the end, that she doesn't want anything to do with herself. But at the same time, as the episode continues going on, she begins showing some rather, I want to say, self-destructive behavior. Case in point, when she gets poofed the first time and rushes her regeneration. Instead of reforming in a regular body like that would be just her body, instead it's clear that it was obviously a hash job, that she just wanted to get back into the battle because, hey, it's her room, she has to deal with this shit. But as a consequence of this, she creates a form that's not it's a form that's not altogether built right. Case in point, like I said, instead of hands, she had feet. She had a giant ear. It's clear that she really put no thought into this. She really just wanted to get it done, which might easily be because of Steven asking his questions, that she really just didn't want to think about herself. She really just wanted to move on and get back into things. Case in point, back to the mission at hand with the slinker. But as the episode goes along and Garnet continues criticizing her, she begins mounting a defense. She begins getting angry about her body, about her form, which in a way it makes sense. This is actually, I think, a common defense mechanism with people who have self-loathing and image issues. And in this case, she gets angry when she's angry when she's not being accepted. And this kind of feeds back into her self-loathing. When it comes down to Amethyst, she doesn't want to think about herself, but how she gets her confidence is through what other people give her. And throughout the episode, Garnet denies that to her. Throughout the whole episode, as she continues reforming into these different bodies that really do not match for her, she keeps looking to Garnet for words of wisdom. When Garnet is angry that her current form was a rush job, that she should have taken her time like Pearl, she immediately interprets that as, oh, you want me to be like Pearl? Fine. So when she reforms, she immediately is like Pearl. And here's the thing: before she gets pooped each time, gets into a shouting match with Garnet. But then, excuse me a second, had to close the door, and that was Chindy. But then, case in point, I'll deal with that in a minute. But case in point, every time she regenerates, instead of immediately going, "Ha, what do you think of me now?" like a mocking manner, she actually is saying, "Do you like me now? Do you like what I'm doing? I'm doing this for you." Sorry, that's crunching. Chindy has a water bottle. She's pretty much just saying, I'm doing this for you. But because Garnet is not giving her the positive affirmation that she wants, it gets her angry. And so she keeps changing it, which in a way is very much it's a normal behavior for people with self-loathing and image issues. She doesn't want, she has such a low opinion of herself that she doesn't want to, she thinks that what she wants is is wrong. What she wants to look like and how she prefers to look are just inherently wrong. Again, apologies for the crunching. Excuse me. Sorry about that. It was quickly becoming a quiet on set kind of deal. But like I said, Amethyst thinks that what she wants is just wrong. And so she she keeps trying to look to others to give her the assurance that she needs, to tell her, this is what you need to look like in order for me to accept you. And sadly, but as such, like I said, because Garnet continuously doesn't keep saying, no, this is wrong, she just keeps changing. Instead of listening to what Garnet's saying, she instead is just listening to the base stuff. When she says Pearl would have taken her time, she thinks, oh, you want me to be like Pearl? Fine, I'll look like Pearl. Which says, when she says what you're doing is affecting the strength of the team, she's saying, oh, so you think I'm weak. So she comes back as that big buff thing. And when that's failing, she's just telling me what you want me to be, and I'll be that. And it isn't until Steven says she doesn't want to think about herself that she finally starts taking the time and stops trying to get that assurance. And when she finally does create a form that is supposed to be her, it's clear that she's kind of nervous about it. She doesn't outwardly show it, but when she finally does reform in her form that she has for the rest of the series, well, not the rest of the series, but at least for a while, the one she has for a while, again, excuse me. Again, you know what's going on. But like I said, when she first initially appears, she's initially nervous, and she does well in hiding it, but when she actually is being praised for her choice, she's just like, again, sorry. You know what it was. Like I said, though, it wasn't until Steven says she doesn't like thinking about herself that she finally put time into it. And by the end, when she finally does smile, it makes the most sense, because at this point, it's assurance that she isn't bad. That what she wants is not inherently bad, because when she finally does put more thought into what she wants to look like, and actually does create something that is her and not what people tell her to be, it does make her smile. Sometimes that bit of positivity is a nice way of helping someone, well, just love themselves, because again, she's being praised. Like I said, she's being praised for what she did, not for what someone told her to be, which I think is a nice little lesson, and I think is a good way of helping people with similar issues, with similar body images and self-loathing issues, because it's a nice way of being relatable. And like in this case, again, it showcases it rather well, and it, at the same time, also does offer some development in that regard. It's, again, not complete. My Amethyst still has her share of issues after this episode, but at the very least, it's a nice little bit of assurance to Amethyst that what she wants is not wrong. I like that. I think it's sweet, and like I said, I think her new form is fine. And after this episode, when she now has a new form, the theme song ends up changing. I mean, it's still the same theme song, but it's higher temp, but the beat is more rock themed. It's definitely a lot less video game with less synthesized instruments. It really does feel stronger, so to speak. So there you go. Sorry, Chindi is right here, and she's doing things. Excuse me. Just excuse me. Before we get to Sworn to the Sword and what I thought about that, I have to deal with her. Okay. Just a heads up, she might keep doing things. But as I was saying, let's get to Sworn to the Sword. In terms of essential character stuff, this episode doesn't really introduce anything new in Pearl's regard, as we've already known that she was infatuated with Rose and held her on a high pedestal, and that her infatuation was kind of unhealthy. Because, as we've seen, she really admires Rose to an nth degree, to the point where she worshipped her. She worshipped the ground she walked on. She thought she was special because of all these wacky-tacky things that she did, yada yada yada. But this episode, I think, does well in showcasing the negativity that comes from such worship. Because, yeah, when you actually hear what her mindset was about how to give yourself to someone, give your life to someone, to the point where she started saying, you don't matter, they matter. Yeah, that's not really healthy. And it's very much implied that as the episode goes along, that's exactly what she felt her relationship was to Rose. That she held Rose on such a high pedestal that there was no room for her. That she kept pushing that, in the point where she thought, no, I don't matter. You're the only one that matters. I just need to give myself to you, and everything will be fine. I don't care if I die as long as you live. Yeah, it's a very much unhealthy mindset to have. And the more you see her projecting that onto Connie, the more worried you are for Connie's sake. Because Connie starts adopting it really hard. Because, yeah, she keeps talking about how... Because when she starts talking about how she doesn't let that Steven's the only one that matters and that she means nothing, yeah, it really becomes clear that this is not right. And what makes it worse, it's very much implied that Pearl was told to not do this. That apparently apparently she kept trying to do this. She kept trying to give her life to Rose in battle, But Rose kept telling her to knock it off. Yeah, it's implied by when her final outburst, when she yells out, "Why won't you let me do this for you?" Apparently, every single time she tried to put her life on the line for Rose, tried to make it feel like her life meant nothing in the grand scheme of Rose's life was the more important thing. It really made it feel like it's implied that Rose told her the same thing that Steven did. You are not lesser than I am. We are equal, so stop doing this. I don't appreciate it. And it's clear that throughout the episode, she keeps trying to project that onto Connie. That Connie is the new surrogate. That if she wants to fight by Steven's side and not be a burden, that she needs to be a warrior in Steven's service. She needs to be in his service, needs to fight for him, needs to die for him, and that Steven is just too darn important. And when Steven tells her to pretty much quit it, yeah, Pearl takes it very seriously, to the point where she gets very defensive, gets very angry. I think it's very much implied that she tried the same thing with Rose, but Rose had a similar reaction to Steven. Don't do that. It's creepy. And so by the same time though, when Steven finally does showcase to Pearl that what she does to pretty much tell Pearl to stop that, it finally kind of gives Pearl perspective, and I think it finally hits her that yes, she was kind of going about this all wrong. Yeah, once again, it was her projecting more of her own feelings of because it kind of gives a very because this whole mindset kind of gives another window into just how little she views her, about how low of an opinion she has of herself, to the point where she felt that to work alongside someone like Rose was not something like a friend meeting a friend. It was, you're higher than I am. I exist only for you. I exist only to die, just in your service, which I can kind of understand. But the thing is, the more you get to know someone that you feel is better than you, the more you start to realize that they're just like you, and they don't like that. They don't like that. They don't like being put on such a pedestal, which is again implied with what happened with Rose and Pearl. That apparently when she kept doing this, Rose did tell her, no, stop doing that, and it did get to her. It got to her because even at that moment, she kept thinking, no, I'm just me, and she's her. She is so much better than me. I am nothing, but this is the least I can do. I can at least do this for her. And when she kept projecting that mindset onto Connie and almost got Connie to think like her, yeah, it's kind of scary. But at the same time, when Steven finally does kind of knock it out of her head, kind of knocks the fantasy out of her head, and then finally sits down and talks to her, it finally kind of gives her the perspective and realizes that the reason why she was doing that isn't because Rose made her feel like she was nothing. It's because Rose made her feel like she was everything. Most likely part of the reason why she reacted the way that she did was because Rose did make her feel so strongly. But at the same time, there's always those thoughts in the back of her head telling her, you're nothing, you mean nothing to her, so you should do this. But at the very least, if you really want to showcase how much you appreciate her, do this. It's a very much unhealthy and scary mindset to have. These self-destructive thoughts that tell you they're better than you, they always will be. The least you can do is lick their boots. It's sad. At the same time, it comes from a place of genuine praise and positivity. In the case of Rose and Pearl, Pearl, as she said at the end, Rose made her feel like everything, but that praise mixed with the negativity to create the whole I gotta keep risking my life for you mindset. And it isn't until she finally gets perspective with Steven and Connie and quickly realizes, oh, this is what you meant, that she finally realizes, oh, I was doing this very much wrong. And starts realizing she shouldn't have been training Connie to be a servant to Steven, but she should have been training her alongside Steven, which actually makes the ending feel nicer when she does decide she's going to start training Steven and Connie. Because yeah, after this episode, they do train together. We do see their training a few episodes here and there, and it is nice and it's cool seeing their progress every now and then. But at the same time, it started with this episode, and I think the episode does well in setting it up while also exploring more of Pearl's character. So yeah, again, I'm not going to say the episode's perfect. Like I said, the whole stuff with Rose is really nothing new. We already knew she was infatuated with Rose and held her to an unhealthy level. and held her on an unhealthy kind of, was infatuated with her in an unhealthy way. But at the same time, it is kind of cool to see. It is kind of nice to see more of her, just kind of her own issues come into light and see them dealt with, while also seeing her try to move, while also seeing her move past them, albeit a bit too quickly maybe. While also using that healing to help Stephen and Connie improve their fighting prowess and continue. And well, I'm just gonna say it: grow the crystal gems. Because after this episode, when Connie keeps learning how to sword fight, she does become an invaluable member of the team. So I like that. I like seeing more of that growth, and it's still nice seeing more of Stephen and Connie working together. Because again, Stephen didn't want Connie to serve him. He wanted her to fight by his side. And when they fight side by side, I think they actually are a good pair, with Connie as the sword, Steven as the shield. It's nice. I think it works, and it is kind of cool seeing them develop from here. So, overall, I think these episodes are really good. Like I said, Reformed was a nice thing that showcased more of Amethyst's mindset and how it kind of developed from there, and kind of the developments there for her as we see her deal with her self-loathing and body image issues, and seeing her and through the support of her friends and loved ones ultimately overcome that and get into a position where she feels more comfortable and in a better place to love herself. So I like that. And Sworn to the Sword is a nice little character bit that showcases more Pearl's psychological issues. Does a decent job in showcasing her overcoming them. Again, it's a little bit rushed, but it's still sweet. While also setting up future plot points with having Connie and Steven being trained by Pearl now, while also setting up the whole story. Also kind of improving their relationship as they're ready to fight as a team. So overall, yeah, these are good episodes. Decent, fun time overall. Well, not a fun time, good time overall, but definitely a lot more emotional. So, yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and once again, the Steven Universe retrospectives are going to be going on a 1-week break, as next week I'm going to be talking about Black Panther, but once we return, we'll actually be looking at, surprise, surprise, I think an actually good Ronaldo episode. Yeah, I'm scared too. But maybe it'll be fun, maybe it won't. But either way, I hope you have a good night. If you are interested in Black Panther, I hope to see you next week. But if not, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Ginny will see you too. So, take care, everyone, and good night.